Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, whenever you are. I decided to make this video today answering some questions that were posed to me in by someone, not in a comment, but well, let's just say someone reached out to me and asked me to answer these questions. Someone in the United States, and so I have decided to answer them. Okay, so was the influence of the United States in Europe after World War II completely non-beneficial? And how did that play out with the Soviet Union? First of all, let's talk about the different forms in which the Soviet Union and the United States ruled Europe, because this is the question that is here. Okay, it was not in many occasions, even in the Eastern Bloc, it was not a direct domination. Okay, it was not that direct. They only intervened when they needed to, but it was an effective domination. It was wartime Europe, a devastated Europe, most of it, and these two blocs used that to control Europeans, and in a sense, they are still trying to do it. Okay, that clownery of Trump and Putin meeting is the last, let's call it, the last incarnation of it, and it won't work. At least not now, but maybe in this video or in some other video. Okay. Today I want to talk about this. Okay. First of all, Soviet style governance does not work. It does not make people happy. It does not help people to be better. Why? Because this is human nature we are talking here about. Okay. You cannot have a state in which that there is no control, no checks and balances, and in which the goal, look, make no mistake, the goal of that, that type of states, the goal is honorable, to have everyone to be equal, everyone to receive the same benefits from the state, everyone to have an insured something that is certain: job, house, healthcare, food, happiness. That is all very beneficial. Okay, and this is the reason why a lot of people in the early 20th century felt so drawn to it, because it talked to them. Okay, a lot of people converted, let's call it converted. It's a word, but I will use this word because it's easier for you to understand. A lot of people converted to communism in different forms all over Europe because it talked with them. In Portugal, for example, a lot of people turned to communism because they were living in a state that was controlled by superstition and religion, by old age imperial mindsets, and the domination of some rich families over the entire country that was divided almost in a feudal style. And that was very ironic because in Portugal, and also to a sense in part of Spain, feudalism never even existed. If you don't know this, I will explain it to you. Some scholars have said that there was never a kind of feudalism in Portugal, and in most of Spain. There are areas in Spain where feudalism effectively existed because there was no time for it. No time and no manpower. The medieval let's call it, from Portugal. Okay, it was already a proto-state before Roman conquest. With Roman conquest, they divided what is still today the ethnic and linguistic area of what is Portugal, the West, that were mainly Celtic, more Celtic, let's call it like this, populations, and not so integrated like the Celtic Iberian in the eastern part of the peninsula. Okay, just for you to understand, but there was an ethnic difference between people. But okay, they were all of the same stock. Okay, all populations that were in Central Europe that then migrated to different parts of Europe, and in some places they let's call it mixed with the local human populations that already existed here. Okay, but this happened all over Europe. Okay, not just here, but there was this difference. You can look at it even in the names of places, aspect of the people also. For example, a Portuguese scholar called José Leite de Vasconcelos. Okay, he studied this very. He did 3 volumes, 3 or 4 volumes. I read them all about this in the early 1900s, 1800, late 1800s, something like that, in which he went to the detail of examining the name of each town and place, an important and relevant place in Portugal, and also to assess in Spain. And he came to a lot of conclusions, a lot of scientific, and let me reiterate this, scientific conclusions. So much so that a lot of people did not like his work because he was so scientific about it. You understand? He was very cold in that aspect. You can see that at least in his writing how he did it, and he came to conclusions. Like for example, when you see words in our ancient language, and that still exist in our ancient language, even though with the Roman influence, that end in something, for example, like briga, that is a name of Celtic origin. And for example, in Ireland they would say caer as a place, and here they will say kite, but it's a word of the same absolute origin. And he found out a lot of them. Okay, he found parallelisms between gods, like for example the Lusitani to say that to claim that their forefathers had come from the sea, a legend that is common in other Celtic areas. He found a lot of it. Okay, and to have, for example, the bearded god that wanders in the woods. This is just an example, and the deification of rivers, of streams, of lagoons, of sacred forests, and all of that. Okay, something that also exists in northern Spain and also, of course, in parts of central Spain, because you have to understand that people, there wasn't an homogeneous border. Okay, you have tribes. The similar tribes were associated in federations, like the Lusitani. They associated with other tribes. You had, for example, here in Portugal, you had the Coni or Sinetes that were populations that were already here and that mixed with the Celts and that existed in what is today Algarve and parts of the Atlantic coast of the southern provinces of Portugal, for example, in South Alentejo. Okay, and then you had the Celtici, which were a group of Celts that immigrated and settled between the rivers Tejo, Tagus, and Guadiana. Okay, and they formed in South Alentejo, in the parts of North Alentejo, from the Tagus up you had the biggest tribe that gave the name to the federation, the Lusitani, and they went up all the way to the north. And in the north, you had the Calaicos, which which were their relatives, let's call it like this, and that installed themselves in northern Spain. What is today Galicia, and where ironically the language of the Portuguese and of the Spanish, the language all comes from that nucleus that was conquered briefly by the Muslims, but that remained that, for example, in towns like Porto, the Muslims only dominated for, I don't know, for 60 years or something like that. Okay, it was a very brief occupation, and even the occupation, just talking about that, even the occupation, it was more of a military and military, economic, and political occupation, because they. Uh, I like. I know a lot of Muslims like to show it as a very beautiful, wonderful Muslim world or whatever, but it was never that. Okay, according to some scholars, they were not even 3% of the population. They did the same as the Germanic barbarians did. They installed themselves in the top and they ruled. And they wrote the history. But that occupation was not, even in the south parts of the country, that occupation was not that intense. Maybe in the Algarve, and of course it influenced agriculture. It gave us a lot of things. Okay, it it influenced architecture and all of that, and more than that, the ancient knowledge of the old world was never completely eradicated, like it happened in Western Europe. Okay, in Western Europe you had the monasteries and you had the warlords, and here you never had that situation. You had cities, okay, that hold knowledge, and which explains a lot of why the Portuguese and also the Spanish were the first to sail out and to discover new worlds. Okay, and of course there was political reasons. The Portuguese, for example, we went to the sea because we could not trade and expand inland, because there was Spain, there was all the feuding European countries, and also because there was this earning for finding out new markets. The beginning of the exploration age was purely. I know in the old regime they like to say they were spreading the word of Christ across the world, but that's all very beautiful. But prayers don't feed bellies. Okay, they went to this. They went across the sea because they wanted to find out what was there, because they wanted to trade, because they wanted to bring products, because they wanted to obtain riches. Okay, and I often find it very odd that to this day scholars in Portugal, in Spain, in France, in the UK, and even in the Americas, they have this idea that there was this bigger purpose behind it all, when in fact it was born purely out of necessity. Okay, and remember this: Portugal is like we like to say, it's a country that is surrounded on all sides by the sea and by Spain. Okay, so we did not have any option except getting boats first, exploring the area where we were, and then to sail out. Okay, even to this day, I tell you this, any Portuguese, most of us, we like the sea. We feel that urge of exploring because it's innate to our environment. Okay, I'm here. Me, for example, I was living inland, but I came to the coastline not just because it's a bit fresher in the summertime. Summers here are scorching, winters are cold. Remember this if you come here. But because I like the sea. I can't be out in the sun too much, but I feel that urge. I feel that need. A lot of ancient cultures would look at, or European old cultures would look at the sea and see an enemy. A Portuguese would see an opportunity. Okay, even the name, one of the names, I don't use my full name, but the one of my surnames, Mereiros, mine, and I'm talking solely about mine. Okay, there might be origins to equal names that don't mean the same thing. I know the origin of my name because I study it. It means Mareiro. Mareiros are the sons of the Mareiro. And Mareiro is the name that is given to a wind that blows in the Algarve from the north. And I was explained via my family that the ancestor that gave us this surname came from the north in a boat. Probably he ended up working there or whatever, or stranded or whatever. He got a wife, he had other kids, and you understand. So literally, my name, which is very weird for me, my name means João, which is the prophet John. Okay, John Northwind. Okay, even in our names, we can trace back the origin. Please be attentive that Marreiros can also come from Marrano, which means Jewish, okay, or Jewish, or people that or Muslims or whatever, okay, because how you, it was a slur name that was given to people that converted from other religions to Christianity, okay, but when you see that name, it's like in your names, okay, Jewish people, they adopted names from the places where they live. Okay, a lot of Jewish people have German names, and that just means they are Germans that profess that were of the Jewish faith. Okay, religion. I I I don't like religion in that aspect because it's so stupid. But carry on. So when you are talking about the Europeans, let's end the history lesson here right now. As you can see, I often rant. Sorry about this. Gotta make a video about this part of history. But you had all of these different countries in Europe. You had Portugal and Spain, and to a sense, South France and Italy that have a similar identity. Then you have France, Germany, and Poland, okay, and all of that are with a different identity. You have the United Kingdom with a different identity, Ireland also with a different identity, but in that area, and you had the Nordic countries, okay, also with their own identity, with common connections and all of that, but with a different identity. You have Russia, where Western Russia is Europe, and East Europe is this mutated culture that is also European, but that is also Central Asian, of course. And then you have a war. And you have these two entities that come and divide Europe. In the First World War, that didn't happen. Okay, there was some influence, but it never. It was just a consolidation. Pardon me, a consolidation of the American influence in Europe via the defeat. Let's call it like this, of the Axel countries. Okay, the German Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Okay, but then you have another power that rises in the east, the Soviet Union, and then you have World War II. And what this is just as this is as simple as this: America and the Soviet Union met in the middle. They would either go to war with each other. hmm, Churchill was an advocate for war, for continuing the war to end, let's call it like this, the Soviet Union, or you would stop this, divide, and profit. And the Americans, this was their first betray. They said, okay, let's make a deal and shut up, Churchill. You don't have enough weapons or money or people to talk about. You still owe us for the money that we lent you for the war. Remember this. France, France couldn't do nothing. France was completely burned down in war. Okay, Germany certainly couldn't do nothing about it. Okay, countries were burned down. Even Portugal and Spain that did not intervene in the war, they were still burning from conflicts before. Okay, remember Portugal was also in World War One, and the economical effects caused the dictatorship to rise. But that is for another video. And then you had this continent that was basically war torn, that was not able to defend itself, and enter these two powers. The Americans say Marshall Plan, we'll give you money to develop, blah 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 blah, and continue. And you had the Soviet Union, we are going to take over these countries, and they did so. Now, in the American side, America wanted clients and wanted allies. They wanted people that would buy their products. They wanted countries that would be receptive to their business, to their political influence, whatever that wanted that. Okay, so what did they do? They invested in the countries, in the European countries. Okay, investment that has been paid tenfold over the years. But I will get into that. Okay. First, let's see the first stage. And then in the Soviet side, what did Stalin did? First of all, he ruled as an autocrat. You have to understand this. Look, I know a lot of people like to show it as a very beautiful thing, the ruling of the working class. Oh my God, this is so beautiful. But it was nothing like that, okay? Because as I was telling you before, the communist idea was a very good idea, but in practice it did not work. It did not work because we are humans. What happened was that Stalin, first of all, he decapitated the old the old order, the competent militaries, the competent noble people and rich people that had adhered to the communist idea. Okay, he killed off the bourgeoisie, whatever you want to call it. Okay, he killed them off, and then he installed people that were personally loyal to him, and those people formed an oligarchy. Those people controlled things. Okay, even if in paper they were all the same, you already had an oligarchy ruling over them. When Stalin dies, it continues that way. So basically, you don't have an independent, let's call it, rule of the people in the Soviet Union. No. You have an oligarchy that dominates the key aspects of the societies, that then installs puppets in the countries after in Europe after World War II, that intervenes militarily, like they did in Hungary, for example, to quell any kind of resistance to the Soviet rule, and that basically rules Europe, rules Europe has occupied states, including East Germany. Okay, a lot of people in those countries cooperated with them because also they will get benefits from it. Some didn't; they got crushed. Crushed. The Americans, what did they do? Come on, install democracy. Okay. And even in Portugal during the dictatorship, and next door in Spain during the dictatorship of Francisco Franco. Okay, there was business. There were companies. If you lived in one of those countries, unless you directly confronted the state, usually no one would bother you. And I know this for people because I talked with people that lived in it. I know of people that got bothered by it. Okay, I had great uncles that I still met that were miners and communists, and that got beaten up, and a lot of things happened. As I said in another video, one of my in the 1920, 1930s, something like that, one of a family member in my bloodlines, okay, let's call it like this, was even deported to Africa, where he was for about 20 years. A lot of things happen to people here too, but usually you would come into a town and it was a normal town. People worked, people studied, people went to the supermarket and buy their stuff, whatever. Okay, in the TV it was all songs and dance. There was a cultural, let's call it, because of the censorship, there was a culture that was dead, stagnated. Of course, here in Spain also the same, but it was stable and business as usual. Okay, you would have American companies here. You have always have had American companies, except those that went against what the state considered was Portuguese. Okay, and but you had a Europe that was developing economically. The economy was in many sense a normal capitalistic society, but because of the influence of the Soviet Union next door, you would have a socialist influence. That is good because we created a number of checks and balances to avoid the complete domination of one and another. And over the years, you have protests against the Americans because the Americans, instead of doing that soft approach of creating friends, not subjects, create friends, whereas in the Soviet Union they created subjects, they did not create friends. In the Americans, they tried to create friends and allies, people that would buy their stuff, sell them our stuff, and support us in times of war. Instead of that, over the years, especially after the 1970s, remember when Vietnam happened and all of that shit, the Americans started to mine undermine the relationship with Europe. It did not start it now with this current administration and Mr. Trump. The difference is how the previous administrations dealt with it. And the previous administrations, what they did is, look, we cannot we cannot try to influence their countries in this way. If we try to do this, this will have backlash. Let's sit with them, let's negotiate. Okay? The European Union is a reaction to what the United States was trying to do to Europe, trying to keep us dominated and nice and quiet and subjected to their whims. Okay? The United States was not acting as a partner even then. But because of smart administrations, okay, like for example, President Carter I have said this often. He was one of the influences that avoided a civil war here, right here in Portugal. Okay, him, the Germans, and the French, with good people. Even Reagan, who was a bit of an asshole, but he also did this. That fear mongering of the Star Wars project and all of that, it was a part of it. Just like other things that they did over the years, okay? Like, for example, convincing a lot of European states to help them defeat Iraq because Iraq had weapons of mass destruction and whatever. Also, they also used the United Kingdom as a way to dominate or to interfere in European business. And this would work when they had a government in the United Kingdom that was favorable to them. But over the years, that turned into something else. When Brexit happened, that influence was all but cut. You still had the goodwill, but instead of working with that goodwill, successive governments in the United States, even before Brexit, even before all of that, I think the last person that was able to speak directly with European leaders, but was a bit weak, especially in the question of Crimea, was Obama. Obama was able to sit down with European leaders, and he was trying to do something that I think Biden wanted to continue, meaning to see in the European Union an ally and not an enemy. And we were never an enemy to the United States. We just wanted to have our own say, to not have anyone dictate to us what we should and we should not do. And then you have the Ukrainian war, and it's all the same thing all over. They are trying to destabilize Europe, to divide it. Simple as this. And right now, you have on both sides two people that want to do exactly that. You have Trump and the Heritage Foundation that want that domination, and you have Putin that has that USSR wet dream. And this is the situation in which we are now. And if I, a simple voice in in somewhere in the internet, can see that, I am absolutely sure that people that are much more competent than me, much more knowledgeable than me, are seeing exactly this. And I will tell you now that Europe won't have it. No, we don't want that. And we are going to weather this storm. And in the future, you will have a very, very, very different geoposition. Okay, we still have voices in the in Europe that are convenient tools for the Americans and and the Russians. Okay, make no mistake about it. Okay, like for example, Orban and the not the current Polish president. Okay, they are they like Russia very much. Okay, yeah, pretty friends. Okay, and then you have people in like for example outside of the EU, the United Kingdom, that are American tools. Okay, and that where there is this struggle between the British far right that wants to take over power and Stam in Labour and other parties, and that in practice that infighting only benefits the Americans that want to destabilize the country, that want it nice and controlled. Okay, and the Russians that were also in that battlefield, Londongrad, remember, they are still there. They still have their estates. They still have their money. A lot of them are British citizens. Look, you have to have some common sense in seeing these things. And you have to understand this, that when America was, like a lot of Americans like to say, defending Europe, you were getting paid for it. And you were getting benefits for it. Up until all of this Trump situation, there were still people that were buying American products because those products were familiar to them, because they had been here forever. Okay. Coca-Cola, for example, has been here since the times of the revolution. Other things too. This is just an example, okay? They were not buying American products because they were good. In this stage, they were buying them because it was like buying something from your friend that does those interesting crochets, okay? That makes those socks and gives it to you in Christmas, okay? And now all of that goodwill is being turned into not hate but hostility because of the way of the United States is behaving. When Mr. Trump says, we are funding NATO, no, you are funding your military bases, but we are paying for it. We are paying for it. No, the United Kingdom was still paying war severances, war payments in the night. I think it ended in the 90s or something like that. You didn't give them nothing. You sold them. Same here. You didn't give us nothing. You sold us. And we bought it. No doubts about it, okay? But the moral aspect now remains. Now, imagine what we think and how we react when we hear Mr. Vance say what he's saying about Europe. And when we know that Mr. Trump probably will exit stage right in the next month, probably, I don't know. Maybe it's just a convenient joke to circle around to distract from other any other things that you are doing. And Mr. Vance will be the president for at least 2 years. Hmm? Imagine how we feel when we know it's not the buffoon in charge that is running the show, but those that are behind them. That's just oh, he wants to deploy the civil guard. Okay, let's deploy it. Okay, let him do it. Let him do it. While he's doing that, we are going to do this. Because do you think we are idiots? The only thing I have to say to the Americans is this: Europe, like China, has been here for a long time. We can endure problems and issues. Can you? Being honest, can you? What? You are going to do like the British Empire did and send a man of war to pacify the people? Do you think anyone here will allow you to invade Canada or invade Greenland or do whatever the hell you want to do? You are going to get a war for it instead of a profit. And we can endure a war, but you can't. I'll tell you right from the start, you can't. I have already endured three economical crashes. One when I was a little boy in the 80s. Another one in the 2000s. So two, sorry. I endured them. Still here. But you, I seriously doubt that you will even endure this one. And don't come with me with all of those talks about the Great Depression and all of that shit. That was peanuts compared to the famines and the diseases and the wars that we already had here and we are still here. Okay? And to all those that are trying to spread propaganda and their own ideas all over Europe, I just have this to tell you. Fuck off to your own corner. Don't come here and try that shit with us because we already know. Look, I see it in the comments sometimes. Okay. Do you think I don't know who you are? Do you think I don't know where those comments come from? And this is a small, insignificant channel, okay? I'm not monetized. I'm not doing this for money. I don't. I look. Even with my health problems that I sometimes have, I work. I work for my pay. I pay my taxes. I'm a decent person. I don't treat women badly. I treat them like women with respect. Something that a lot of people need to learn. Like for example, trying to meddle into the woman's biology and forbidding abortion and other stuff like that. No, like that 11 years old girl, okay, that just had the baby and that was being raped by her stepdad in the United States. And this is one case amongst thousands. A lot of things that you do, burning books, okay, going after people, going after gay and trans people like if they were aliens. They are not. They are people. If you don't like them, leave them alone. Do what I do. If I don't like someone, if I don't like something, man, I simply ignore it. Okay, it's none of my business what people do. As long as it doesn't affect me, as long as they are not attacking me, as long as they are not violating my own integrity, what what do you care about it? Okay, but this is what America is now. It used to be someone that for a profit was giving a benefit to Europe for a profit, always for a profit, but it was giving something to Europe. And right now they are threatening Europe, and that won't work. It didn't work for the Soviet Union, okay? It won't work for Russia. All empires crumbled down, all of them. Yours is no difference. What I have, responding directly to the person that asked me the question, I will tell you this: the United States has, in less than a year now, since January, the United States has destroyed 50 years of soft power. It's destroyed. It won't come back. The goodwill will come back, but the ability to nudge a country to their side, gone. Completely, utterly gone. You may blackmail a country, but that will only work as long as, for example, the European markets are not investing elsewhere. And the European markets that are going to invest in your country now, you know what they are going to do? They are going to buy you up. Just like BlackRock, it's buying is buying all of your family farms. So far, around 400 family farms have gone under. Someone bought them. Your vice president has a substantial shares in a company that is buying out farms. You are not taxing the rich, and they are getting richer, obscenely richer, while you get poorer. And you sit around and you complain and you do your FAFO videos, and some of you laugh about it, some of you scream about it, but in de facto, you don't do nothing. No, and even look, and I hope the Democrats are able to turn this tide around. But you will turn the tide around. But the effects on your relationship, economical, socially, politically, with Europe, and I'm talking specifically just about Europe right now. I will include Canada in this too, because they are in the same team. We are in the same thing. Let me tell you this: we are in the same team. Canada is feeling towards the United States exactly as we are, and Canada was also influenced in the same way. Also was influenced in the same way. They did not have a war on their territory, but this influence, this interaction, economical, social, political, also happened with them. You will not be able to convince people of that because imagine this: in the future, a normal president, American president, wants to start a war. I don't know, with Venezuela, and he wants the aid of their European allies. You know what their European allies are going to say? Well, if you pay for it, we'll go. This is the answer you're going to get if they are willing to do it, to support you. You won't get hostility. Let me tell you this from the start. I have serious doubts that any European state, except maybe uh, Orban, Hungary, will seriously consider uh, being hostile. But what you will get will be exactly the same answer that Trump is giving. How much how much are you willing to pay for our support? Oh, you want us to sanction them? Oh, why? Okay, pay us. Oh, we are going to do this, and we are going to do that. Okay, do it. This is the answers you want to get. When you start to see American military bases being converted into a future NATO or a future European army, that is already happening, that already exists in a form, just not in the form, in the traditional form that you would recognize it, but it already exists. For example, Portugal and Spain, we defend our borders in common. France does the same with Germany, for example, and the Netherlands, whatever. We are already working in a cooperative mode, and this is how a future European army would look like: regional units and a central command. The central command is the only part. It already exists more or less, but this is the only thing that is lacking. And when that happens, then I say okay. And I hope I hope that Europe doesn't. Americans now they are trying to push Americans and Russians like they are trying to push right wing rhetoric and other stuff in order to destabilize Europe. But I hope they stop because if the people that are right now in the political representatives in the EU and in a lot of countries, if those moderate people uh, are toppled by authoritarian mindset people, you will not have a European Union. You will have a European Empire in a different form. Okay, it will have the MPs and all of that, but those MPs will be right wing. Those MPs will be extremists. And instead of, for example, oh please, trying to make peace in Ukraine for Russia to go out, they will invade fucking Russia. We also have not nukes. And if the United States continue, another mad president, Mad Hatter, gets into power, we are going to take Greenland. We'll invade the United States. If you think I'm joking, I'm not joking. I'm just trying to trying to show you that things can happen. Times change. Countries change. If imagine history, imagine history as a road, and that road has a lot of crossings. If you go via one crossing, history will turn into something. If you go via the other, history will turn into something completely different. And what the United States did when they elected Trump was they were in a crossing. Kamala was not perfect, but she would keep that status quo. She would keep that situation in which the United States would be able to dialogue with the Europeans and to maintain that path, that stability path that gave you a lot of wealth and a lot of stability in your country. A lot that a lot of what is built in your country came from European money. And you don't like to hear it, but you are going to hear it because that's the truth. Not just from Europe, but from Canada too, from the rest of the world where we install your little companies. Hmm? But no, you chose the other guy, and that it took you to another path. Well, I know this video is a bit longer, but I I thought it would be appropriate to make it. I know I ranted a bit on history and all of that, but this is my nature. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't have any papers, I don't have any guides, I don't have anything. I just study a subject and then I talk about it. This is basically what I do. So I would ask you to please leave a comment. Okay, tell me your opinion. If you want me to make a video about a specific subject, please drop it in the comments. And if I can, I will make a video about it. But just understand that if I make a video about a subject, I will only do it if I'm sure that I can do a decent job about it. Okay. Also, remember, as always, when I begin to talk about something, this is not rehearsed, not at all. And that I try to have no bias. Of course, I will have my personal bias. It's normal. Everyone has it. But I try to be honest. I try never to mislead anyone. I try not to offend people. If people get offended, well, I'm sorry. That is why I have a disclaimer in my videos. Don't watch it. And I will ask you this, okay? If you want me to make, for example, a video about history, specific, any kind of history, please tell me, or philosophy, whatever, okay? Politics, a subject that interests you. Just drop a comment, and I will try to do it. Okay. Now, I hope you are all safe, especially if you are in the United States. I hope you and your loved ones are safe, that you are taken care of, that you have food, that you have shelter, that you have a job, that you have medicine. And especially, don't stop fighting peacefully, but don't stop fighting against these movements, okay? Because countries are made by people. And if the people in the United States change, their opinions, change their demeanor, change the way that they are acting, then the country will change itself. And you will be better. And you deserve better. You deserve better. Okay? Because I'm not going to sit here and forget that so many American soldiers died in Europe. But I will be a hypocrite if I did not say that all of those soldiers that died, their death was taken advantage of by the rich buggers that are now controlling your economy, that are now controlling your lives, your healthcare, and all of that. And I don't think that is fair. Those people, the memory of those people that died here, right here in the shores of Europe, in Europe, the memory of those people that died here deserves better. Your veterans deserve better. They don't deserve this. They don't deserve this. No, sorry. Thank you for all for watching this, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Okay.